Afghan and Iraqi situation is being held over for the Iran war especially. This is what's going to justify all of those troops being there as they mass. It's mostly going to be an aerial attack, I think, on Iran, but there will be some troops justified for staying in the region because even if they take out all of the infrastructure, military infrastructure in Iran, it still becomes a seething pile of Muslims that are just going to have so much hatred for the West that all of our soldiers are going to be risked in this whole region.
And then we may have real attacks, which the globalists will then use to clamp down on the American people. So clearly, you're right, they have encircled Iran for that purpose. What's the time frame from your intel on the strike on Iran?
Well, I think it's going to be this year. They're still looking for a provocation, a justification of it, but I think it's going to be this year. Relative to your question about what I think about the Third World War and when one of these trigger events is going to go off, I think it's probably going to be an attack of North Korea on South Korea in earnest, to which the U.S. has to respond, probably with tactical nuclear weapons. They have such an overwhelming majority of troops there that we cannot stop them, and all of our 26,000 U.S. troops will be at risk. I think 2005, there's a 2015, 50-50 chance it could happen, but more likely almost toward the end of the decade because China won't be ready till then.
All right, Joel, hold on. Do 5 more minutes with you if you can. I want you to have 5 minutes to really walk through this scenario slowly. We'll be right back.
He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
We've got a surprise congressman popping in about 30 minutes who's very upset about the airline chicanery and the slave training going on. That's backfiring on the system. We're going to open the phones up in the next 2 segments for your view on North Korea, the TSA, the opt-out day. I'm just not flying. All that's going on. 1-800-259-9231. 800-259-9231. We got about 4 minutes left with Joel Skousen, a World Affairs Brief. If you just joined us, he was getting into his global strategic worldview from studying the globalists that I think is very accurate from my own research. I concur with much of what he's saying. I think that's the general direction that the global power blocks are moving. In 4 minutes, sum up the next 8 years, as you say, and where the hot spots are and what this overall plan is by Foundation X.
Okay, before I get into that, I just want to make a clarification. When I said, when do I think they're going to attack Iran, when I said this year, I didn't mean 2010. I mean in the next 12 months.
Yes.
Because this year is almost through. Going back to this general scenario, remember that Russia is running this show. China is going to be tagging along as the ally to back up Russia in its nuclear attack on the West. China wants to play the role as not the primary attackant because it wants to position itself to be the Cold War opposer of the West after it becomes the ally of the West during the war. It's like Russia. Russia comes in and helps the West beat Germany and then becomes the new Cold War enemy and gets all these concessions from the United States in the process. That's what China is setting itself up to. So China will be careful not to appear to be too much of the enemy, even though they will take, I think, when this war starts, the Pacific in order to guard the rear of Russia. And then from that position, they'll attack Russia sometime during the war so that the West can win the war against Russia. Then it will be the West versus China. That's the big picture. Now, in doing so, I don't think that China will do ravaging attacks on Japan, the Philippines, Australia, New Zealand. I think they'll occupy or encircle to keep them contained, but will not do a lot of damage so that when they switch sides, they won't be viewed too much as the enemy. Now, in terms of timing, we have to watch Russia because Russia is the one that's calling the shots here. Right now, the West is in the middle of giving everything away to the Russians. In NATO, for example, doing a joint military missile defense with Russia, Russia says, we'll cover your east, and you take up the missile defense in Western Europe itself. What they're doing, and this is very, very interesting, they're saying, we'll put our own missile defenses in here to guard against Islamic, rogue missile attacks. But they're taking the prime position to be able to use anti-ballistic missiles to keep Western anti-ballistic missiles from shooting down their own missiles in their boost phase by taking the Near East position. I don't know if I'm being clear what I'm saying verbally here. But it's very, very important for the West to understand that the French, who are now driving the agenda in NATO, are completely selling out to the Russians.
Why, just for natural gas, or?
No, it seems to be part of the globalist agenda.
Sure,
the natural gas is being driven by the
EU has been called by Lord Monckton and many others properly the new Soviet.
That's right. It is a new Soviet, and they're basically, it's really a control of who's going to run this new world order. The Russians want to run it. The Anglo-American establishment know that they intend to run it, and they have to eliminate Russia in the process. But they're in the process of luring Russia in and getting it to be confident enough to attack the West. That's been the West problem all these years, is trying to get Russia over it. That's why the disarmament. That's why taking out our MX missile, even when they reneged on theirs.
You know, Joel, this is too important. I promise to go to calls, but can you come back on the other side of the quick break and for 3 minutes put bookends on this and explain in basics the factions you see, how you see it playing out? This is so important. Can you come back for 3 more minutes?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, we will. And I promise, folks, 800-25-9-9231. We're going right to your calls. Stay with us.
Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
Going to your phone calls in a moment. Joel Skousen, editor of World Affairs Brief, researching the New World Order for decades. Of course, joining us here, talking about the different power blocks, the Anglo-American establishment, the Chinese bloc dominating Asia, the Russian bloc, now, from a lot of evidence I've seen, is teamed up with the EU. You've got the Vatican, strangely enough, being involved in the founding of the EU. How many different power blocks do you see? I mean, they're all interconnected, but just briefly, from your view, name the power blocks.
Well, there are three major and only three true power blocks.
China, Russia, and the U.S.
China, Russia, and the Anglo-American establishment. It's not just the U.S.
Sure, it's England as well.
Yeah, it's England as well. They're still locked together to try to control the world in a new world order. But there are several subgroups underneath those, and it's very difficult to track those. For example, we have dozens of organizations like Committee of 300, the Bilderberg Group, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission. I think the Trilateral Commission is up there at the very, very top in the Anglo-American establishment, and they essentially control CFR underneath them. The CFR is more visible. Bilderberger Group, I view as more of a leadership conference where they're bringing in people, bringing them up in the system, testing their ability to interact, and in these private conferences. But the big decisions aren't made at Bilderberger. They're usually made in private meetings before then. There is a Vatican connection there, which is deep, deep underground. That's kept way, way underneath the surface.
Is it part of Foundation X?
I think it is. I think because Foundation X is very, very hypersensitive about nobody knowing who they are, that seems to be the Vatican connection as well in there, and that matches with that. But as I say, nobody knows what's going on deep inside the Foundation X realm. These people are hyper secret about
Well, I agree with you on the Vatican connection, because studying the founding documents of the EU, of the Bilderberg Group, I mean, when you go back to the Treaty of Rome, the Treaty of London in 46, the Treaty of Rome in 59, that's when the EU was really founded. I mean, that was the Vatican in there really getting that done. But then we see a lot of the Anglo-American establishment constantly attacking the Vatican, so we do see that fight going on.
That's right. And you see a lot more of it going on in the Israel interaction, with the Vatican working in Israel, trying to co-opt Israel's sovereignty, et cetera. And so they're working that angle very, very strongly.
So who are the Rothschilds teamed up with?
As I say, I don't really know what's going on at the very top levels. I know they coordinate and have strong control over the U.S. faction, Federal Reserve, and things like that. But frankly, I'd be lying to say I knew what was going on the inside, because I'm not an insider. I don't know.
Okay, so we have these three blocks. I agree with you there. The globalists admit this in their own policy reports. They're very secretive about Foundation X.
The Socialist International we've got to talk about.
Yes.
In Europe, the Socialist International is a Moscow-driven front. They know very, very well that the Communist Party is still alive and well and calling the shots in Russia through Medvedev and Putin, and actually working through the oligarchs. The oligarchs are really the old-line communist leaders who have faked their rejuvenated view of being, mafia, oligarchs, capitalists. They're no such thing. They are the communist leaders. But the Socialist International is still run by those oligarchs, and that's why they are in Europe. But they're playing a very interesting role. Tony Blair was very big in the Socialist International, an outright Marxist. He came over to the globalist side and really carried water for the globalists during the entire Iraq War. Whether or not he was doing that as an infiltrator from the Socialist International, or whether he was really truly bought out and converted to the our side, or the globalist side of that, I'm not sure.
And notice Blackwater converted to Catholicism, Prince, and so did Blair.
That's right. And that's got to have to do with the major top-level controllers, for us to think, points at the Vatican. And French President Sarkozy, it's very interesting that the French now are leading the charge. Instead of the U.S., they're kind of playing up to Russia on part of Europe, trying to snooker Europe into accepting Russia as a full partner in peace. They're saying the most egregious, stupid, idiotic things about Russia being no threat. They're fully integratable as into Europe, and that's exactly what Europe wants, or what Russia wants in terms of being able to insert all of their spies and military people into NATO.
Okay, so to interrupt and finish this, we'll have you back soon. The three different groups all infiltrating each other, but the Anglo-American establishment, from my research, is the most powerful, the most wealthy, the most cunning, the most successful, and they are planning to invite this attack and then destroy their enemies and then be able to set up the complete fascist world government. Is that where you see this going?
Absolutely. The nuclear attack is essential for our leaders coming out of their bunkers and convincing the U.S. to go into a militarized world order, excluding Russia and China, because they're now the enemy. And we will be disarmed in the sense of saying, there's no problem. We don't have any communists as part of this League of Democracy now. Whatever it's going to take us into this Third World War. And that's how we'll lose our liberty.
So that's the original Rand Corporation COG plan.
That's right. They will not return sovereignty to U.S. after this war because China will be the new enemy, and they'll be so big and so strong that the UN, or whatever its name will be, will have to say we have to remain armed as an international force to confront this great world power, China.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And you think that within 8 years this would have already happened?
Yeah, I'm thinking these things tend to take longer. It's been taken decades to convince Russia to attack the United States. They're getting ready, they're planning, but it's still, they're scared to death of what they know we're hiding. And so,
Joel, we're going to have you back up sometime in December, if you can do it for 2 hours, to really go through this and break it all down, because I tend to agree with you. That's what all the evidence shows. And we're coming to the same conclusion, and we've got to talk about a way to try to avert this. WorldAffairsBrief.com. Thanks for spending time with us.
My pleasure, Alex.
Always great having you on. Okay, folks, bye-bye. I'm going to get to your calls. We got a congressman coming up, but I will take a lot of calls. Let's be quick about it. Carolyn in Tennessee, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Oh, Alex, I praise God that I was able to get on and talk to you again. I've been trying to call for a few days now. I spoke to you about a week, 10 days ago, and told you that they are telling us that we have to take the flu shot in the Wellmont Hospital system down here in Rogersville, Tennessee. My little hospital is forcing people to take the shot or get fired.
And it's all color of law, and they tried all this last year, and it came out in court that they cannot force you to do that or wear a mask. The message is the flu, which kills a lot less people than automobiles or anything else, you've